Hey guys, I'm Arthur Geese, reviews editor at Polygon. Joining me today to talk about Bioshock Infinite, we have Chris Plant, Polygon editor at large, Ben Kucheris, senior editor at the Penny Arcade Report, Adam Sessler, editor-in-chief of Revision 3 Games, and Rush Frushtick.
Editorial producer, Polygon.
And Rush Frushtick, editorial producer at Polygon. Off to a great start already. So I guess the thing to know before we get into anything is that this is a full-bodied discussion of Bioshock Infinite. There is nothing off limits. Everything is on the table.
It has cherry undertones.
Yeah.
Nice beechwood
Oaky.
taste. Yeah, it's oaky.
Ambergris. So we're going to spoil the ever-loving shit out of parts of Bioshock. We're not totally sure what we're going to talk about yet, but I wanted to start by asking each of you how long God only knows was stuck in your head.
I mean, it's amazing that they spent obviously a lot of money to license these songs,
Right.
and then
Because
it shows how confident they are. They've hidden the songs.
There are lots, like Tears for Fears is in there.
Yeah.
The licensed music section of the credits goes on for like a minute. And I feel like I didn't hear like half of it.
Yeah, I thought that there were fewer of those like focused main characters. Like when I think of Bioshock 1, I think of Dr. Steiner, and you basically have an entire level dedicated to Dr. Steiner and his backstory. There were very few of those. Fink was obviously a big one because he has his whole level dedicated to like his ethos. But there were very few of those, which was, I thought, a little bit disappointing. You did get a lot of characterization out of those voxophones, but I would have liked to see more of that personality.
Bioshock is that you kind of think that this level's about X and this level's about Y. And what was so neat about Infinite is I had no idea where I was going. I could not use my past game experiences to impose on this, like, where I am in the game.
Like
is
really
not the-
solidifies the fact that Booker is not a hero, that Booker is kind of a piece of shit.
You don't really make a decision. She's kind of sadly walking you through the steps to get you to where you need to go.
Well, and that's why you have the Voice of Silence. It's this weird, quiet section of the game with just all the weirdos in the Ben Franklin masks. I mean, yeah, there is a sense of tranquility.
I'm going to be honest, a lot of that stuff thematically made sense, but from a gameplay perspective, that was like the most boring part of the game.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Like the
I thought
Voice
I
of
didn't have any
Silence.
ammo. And it was kind of a bummer, the whole like statue thing, because I was like, every time I walked by one of those statues, I'm like, oh shit, Songbird's coming out. Like, how is no one expecting it? So, I mean, but I did really, really like his arc and that like moment towards the, like his like climax at the end is ridiculously cool.
Through the whole game, I was dreading fighting him as a boss monster. I was like, that's going to be terrible. It's going to be.
I will say that this is one aspect of the game that I really did not like, was essentially any fight that involved anything larger than a human being, I thought was not terribly well implemented. Specifically the handymen, the robot guys with machine guns, the ghost fight was terrible.
Oh, the ghost fight was god
Well,
awful.
before you go shoot down them, because I want to stop on that ghost fight.
Yeah.
That was
Story-wise,
story-wise.
say ghost fight without it
Story-wise,
sounding
that was probably also
Ghost
the weakest
mom.
point.
Yeah,
because
because we haven't touched on it
Sure.
too much. As I was saying about like the boss fights, the handymen, more often than not, I would find these, these moments fighting these guys where it would be, I'd shoot them a bunch of times, they'd get my health down, I'd jump on a skyhook, I'd run away,
Elizabeth would throw you some health and some salt.
or I'd find like a tear that had like the thing I need, and then I'd like hunker down by that tear.
Right.
And a lot, just the combat to me, what I missed personally from Bioshock 1 was the more personal 1 versus 3 or 1 versus 5 combat, whereas this game, in addition to throwing these giant guys at you, sends 60 guys at you, which is a technical marvel. It really is quite amazing.
I found that part really fun, like the masses of guys, because it gives you.
It made bucking Bronco so cool.
Here's the thing, you guys use that. I never use that.
Yeah,
I
I
use
never use the
murder
water.
pros all
I used a little
the
bit of the water.
time.
See, so the loadouts that you can get in this game with all those abilities,
The
I know they're
equipment?
randomized, but I feel like I must have just gotten a bad luck to touch one bad guy. So I would use the ram power, and I would just, from one person to the next, bouncing back and forth. Every time I hit them, it filled my health fully to the top. It filled my magic fully to the top. And I was just
Yeah, I didn't
zipping
get
around
that.
the place. And it was like,
It did feel like it was really lacking in character advancement, which is a shame because I know that was something they initially really wanted to focus on. I mean, all it is the
in a
gear.
way, it might be a struggle in the kind of shooter that they wanted to make, because
Yeah.
on the one hand, you've got like the sort of classic like Doom progenitor where you find a new weapon every couple of levels, and eventually it's just, why have all this stuff? As opposed to something like Halo, where it's like, I have really solid combat mechanics and the sandbox is changed. And you can see they struggle a little bit in juxtaposing those because it's got kind of the same health system from Bioshock, but it's also got the shield now. And I wasn't quite sure how I felt about the lack of being able to carry refill items, which definitely limited how much I could use vigors at the beginning.
Sure.
But the way that they make upgrades necessary is by basically making it so that you need to upgrade, say, your salts capacity, or you're just not going to be able to use stuff
But I was
very
just bummed
often.
that like that was essentially the only decision that you're like permanent decision you're making is like I need more mana or I need more health, instead of being like initially in the earlier designs a couple years ago they were saying you'd get to these moments where you could get 33% faster movement speed, or you'd move faster on skyhooks, and making that decision and be permanent, and you'd have to deal with that decision. And I was really bummed to see like almost all that taken out of the game.
Well, but I mean, you're taking a lot of the experimentation for the player out of the game, and I think that's the thing, is that you don't start to realize how dynamic the skyhook combat can be until about midway through. And if you're putting me in the position of having to make those decisions,
That's fair.
I might play it in a way that's very restrictive. And I at least like the idea that I can go back. I just kept reloading all the skyhook stuff to see if I can make it cooler.
But let's even, if you don't mind me jumping in, let's take a quick step back and realize that we're in this incredibly interesting world filled with incredibly interesting characters who have incredibly intricate relationships, and 85% of the time you're in battle. Like, and I thought the combat was handled very well mechanically, but it's like, it was the most boring part of the game to me. And it's like, you have to get in a battle for 20 minutes, because if you remove all that, the game is 3 hours long.
I liked that the battles were there. There are moments, especially toward the end, where it felt like they were getting in the way of what I wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you want to move the story along.
The violence was my problem, because when I played that demo and I was like, this is great. My wife doesn't play a lot of video games, but just the general story seemed like it was going to be right up her alley. And I was going to play this. And then I played through it on my own, and I was so disturbed by just people's heads popping and me popping the necks. And she saw it for a second, and she's like, what is this awful thing? And I was like, oh, this is that game that you were really excited about. And she's like, no. Yeah. That alone will keep her away from it. And I don't know why it needed to be
There's
there.
a lot of dissonance with that, because essentially the whole game, Booker's saying, I was this awful person, you shouldn't trust me. And Elizabeth will actually react whenever you do an assassination. She'll be like, oh. But then there's that, like immediately after that moment, she was like, here's some ammo. And it just did not work.
I also love at the end of the game when things are really bad between the two of you, and she's like, I just don't know, Booker. Ammo over here. Yeah.
I did, yes.
Can you pop
That's
this lock for me?
Yeah, can you pop this lock for me? Sure, this is the easy lock, Booker.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
That's
know
a
why
video
they
game
put the
thing.
violence
Sometimes
in,
it's a
but-
video game.
Yeah, I think that's what it
Did
comes down to.
Songbird not realize he was bringing books about like lockpicking? Like, was
Yeah.
there no like cosmic
There's some
librarian
bad
going?
parenting from
Maybe
the
not
bird.
this one. Like gun
I just
repair.
imagine him at the library like, ah. And then it's like, you stupid bird, you can't read. I have many problems with Chris Nolan movies, but there's a willingness that you're required to jump into, and I do not like that. That is one thing I don't like about the game, is that it can get away with those, and that people who do criticize that will be shown the door, because it's like, how dare you question that? Everything else works.
I don't know that that's what
find
this
out.
game will do. I feel like this game will inspire discussion about that stuff and what it means in a way that games really rarely do. And even Bioshock, Bioshock had a very strong statement to make and a question to ask about player agency, but that was it. That was the question. Like, it was like, what is player agency? How much free will do you have? Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more
This
in
is
this
just
game.
a laundry list of questions, and one of the only things, it's almost disappointing that it doesn't have time or even space as one game to answer or even examine all the questions it asks.
Sure.
Yeah.
When we're into snark territory, it probably means that it's time to stop. You guys, thanks so much for joining me today.
Sure.
Ben,
Thanks for having us.
Adam. Thank you for joining us. You can check out the Bioshock Infinite review on Polygon.com. You can check out Ben's on the Penny Arcade Report, and Adam at Rev3 Games on YouTube.